Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I will give just a few seconds while people jump in from the waiting room and then we will get started. Let me make sure everyone can message in the chat. There we go. Chat is open, so feel free to say hello, let us know where you're joining from, and the Q&A box should be open as well if you have any burning questions as you join. How are you both this morning, Reuben and Jenny?
Very good, thank you.
Excellent. That's what we like to hear. Perfect. I think there are still people jumping in, but let's get straight into it. So, welcome to today's session titled Double the Output Half the Time Building the Modern Bookkeeping Workflow. So, a little bit of housekeeping before we kick off and I get our wonderful panelists to introduce themselves. This is meant to be interactive, so please do use that chat box. If you have thoughts, comments, etc., please do pop those in there. The Q&A box is also open and please use that for any questions that you do have and we will have time to answer those at the end. Please do put them in the Q&A, not the chat, just so they don't get lost as we go through the session. But my name is Kayleigh Graham. I'm the Head of Partnerships and Growth here at Telleroo, which is a payments company put in place to help support accountants and businesses with bulk payments for both supplier and payroll. Reuben, over to you. Can you introduce yourself and Briefcase, please?
Absolutely. I'm great to see you all. Thank you all for joining this morning. I'm Reuben. I'm one of the co-founders of Briefcase. My background is in finance. I actually started my career in banking and then I moved to the CFO's office at Starling Bank. So I kind of got some first-hand experience in the grind that is monthly close, in dealing with management accounts, dealing with VAT compliance, dealing with financial close and year-end accounts as well. And I left that all behind about a year and a half ago to start Briefcase. Briefcase is an AI agent platform for accountants and bookkeepers. So we automate data capture, categorization, VAT compliance, and more.
Thank you. And Jenny, over to you.
Yeah, so my name's Jenny Evans. I'm a client director within Wilson Partners in our Sevenoaks office, who mainly focus on tech startups and high growth. And we sort of do all the ABS side, so everything from year-end accounts, payroll, bookkeeping, management accounts.
Amazing. Well, thank you both for joining us. Really excited for our conversation today, but going to hand over to the audience first and pop out a little poll. Let me just launch this. But the question is really around where you are losing time at the moment. So let me launch that for you. So where are you losing the most time at the moment? Your answers are coding transactions, chasing clients, processing payments, or month end. So it'd be interesting to see what people have to say about that. But while people are answering that, we'll come back to it. Reuben, you are obviously speaking to lots of firms at the moment. What are you hearing from them? Where are they losing time? What's taking up time for them at the moment?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's all sorts of things, and I think you can answer this in two ways. You could go into like specifics of around like a few workflows which are very painful, whether that is bookkeeping, whether that's specifically doing reconciliation in bookkeeping, or specifically doing coding in bookkeeping. And I think maybe we can touch on that a little bit later. But what I see at like a higher level here is that firms are really looking to adopt technology in a way that can actually enable them to uh, grow their business without necessarily growing their headcount. And I think that's kind of where losing time becomes a limiting factor on that. So when I speak to firms at the moment, they're thinking about what is it that I can do that means that I can actually grow my practice without necessarily having to grow the number of people that I have today. And then I'll always ask them, well, what is it that takes most of your time in the day? And then inevitably, every firm tells me that bookkeeping takes most of their time, or the vast majority do. And I go, oh, that's very interesting because there's a lot of bookkeeping products available. And then we'll actually go into the specifics of why that's still taking time. I think it's all four of those things which are on the page there, which would be a part of that.
Absolutely. And Jenny, does that ring true for you guys over at Wilson Partners?
Yeah, definitely. It's spot on, really. I mean, the overriding, I suppose, for us is clients not seeing the value in where we spend our time, because obviously, as far as they're concerned, bookkeeping's just a easy bit of the process that isn't too involved. So yeah, being able to get software that does that heavy lifting to allow us sort of spend time on more valuable services without directly increasing fees, because obviously being sensitive with clients, and then we can put more time into the services clients value. So.
Absolutely. And Reuben, just coming back to something you said there, you mentioned people wanting to kind of increase capacity without increasing headcount. Why do you think that is?
Yeah, I think there's actually a few headwinds, which are really causing a squeeze, not on every practice, but on some practices. First one being that I'm definitely hearing that it's hard to hire good bookkeepers and it's hard to retain good bookkeepers because as soon as you hire someone who's maybe a good bookkeeper, sometimes they're very comfortable there, but a lot of the time they might want to progress and do other types of work, and then you suddenly lost that amazing bookkeeper because they've gone on to do other things, and then you're back on trying to find a good bookkeeper again. So hiring is definitely a challenge, and we always hear about this kind of shortage of potential new accountants and bookkeepers. I think it's a bigger deal in the US, but I am hearing that in the UK as well. And then so that's one headwind. I think the other headwind is around kind of people rethinking models which have become very popular in the last 10 years, one of those being outsourcing, for example. And outsourcing can work great, but I've also heard it be very hit and miss. And I've heard people say they're having challenges with the quality of the work being produced, the timeliness of the work, the client communication, and they're looking at alternatives as a result of that.
Interesting. Okay. So we've put the poll out. Where are people losing the most time at the moment? I'm going to end that and just pop the results on screen. Majority saying chasing clients, which I don't think will be a surprise to anyone, right? I think that's always going to be up there in terms of what's taking up time, followed swiftly by coding transactions, then processing payments, and then month-end activity. And I think that probably rings true to all the conversations we're having, Reuben, between us and all the firms. And Jenny, I don't doubt that sits pretty well with what you guys are experiencing down on the ground as well. Let me stop sharing that for a moment. Perfect. So, working smarter obviously isn't just about the tech. There are a number of different things that go into that around people, around processes, around mindset. And I guess, Jenny, what I want to understand from your side is from a practice perspective, when you are stepping back and you're thinking about how you work smarter, how you increase capacity across the team, which of these stands out as the most important, if any, and what's your experience been of trying to kickstart that change?
Yeah, I mean, it's multifactored, and they all, to be honest, are part of the process and align. I mean, it's quite a big undertaking, but nowadays there are so many softwares out there, and thoughts around it that you can pick and choose. I mean, for us, I think going back to the poll, really, bookkeeping, chasing in information, and then undertaking the process was our biggest barriers, where we were losing the most and really not being smart. So it was sort of trying to tackle that and making sure sort of we could automate and make it as efficient as possible. I mean, even when it comes to sort of making payments, and sort of the old style version of thinking was sort of 2 pairs of eyes review. So one preps, one reviews. It's just time consuming. So how do you make that more efficient, and more streamlined for us and the client?
Absolutely. And Ruben, in the conversations you're having, how are these things showing up? What are people flagging as concerns when they are starting to think about bringing in new tech and streamlining those processes?
Yeah, I mean, there's bringing in new tech especially is like a very big decision that a firm has to make because it impacts every aspect of the firm, or at least a lot of technology does. It's going to impact every single member of the team. It's also going to impact your clients, and it's going to impact your process, and it's not going to work unless you have the right mindset. So it is absolutely a big decision that firms are making. For me, when it comes to it not just being about the tech. I think in order to actually benefit from the latest technology, you need to be or it helps to have a mindset in which where you are willing to rethink processes that you've currently done before. Because you could have like an amazing, I mean, this is a silly analogy, but you could get like a Ferrari, but if you still drive it like it's your Golf, then like you're not going to be benefiting from the Ferrari. Like if you still have the same kind of go over the exact same process that you went through before you had that technology that is now faster or smarter, then you're actually not benefiting from that at all. So, and this is something which I actually encourage our team at Briefcase to do. So our kind of software engineers, I encourage them to think, okay, now that you have these AI coding tools that help you write code better, what does that mean for the output that you can do in a day? How does that change the quality of work that you can produce? So I think a large part of this is about raising the bar and raising expectations across the team, and that's really how you're going to get the most out of the tech that you are using.
I think that's a really important point. I think when we are thinking about the technology part, I think, like you say, you have to rethink those processes, and we see it quite a lot on the Telleroo end, where people will come to us and they almost are approaching it as they want to bring in Telleroo as a replacement for their current process, but they want it to replicate the process they have, right? And they'll go, okay, well, at the moment we have 3 people visually check that these bank details match and are correct, and we go, okay, and then they go, so can we do that in Telleroo? And I go, no. And why would you want to? Because the system does that check for you, and it checks it against the information, and it's running a confirmation of payee check. So why on earth would you still want 3 people to manually check it? And it's kind of, like you say, it's taking that step back and going, okay, actually, what does our process look like currently? Where can the tech come in, and what does that do to the new process, and being able to kind of roll that out. And I think, like you say, we definitely do see firms come in and try and just use technology to replicate what they already have, not necessarily to improve what they have in place. But that technology choice is also really, really difficult, right? And Jenny, from your perspective, when as a firm you are looking at new technology, what are the kind of things that you are assessing? How do you go into making those decisions?
Yeah, I mean, it is that effect of what extra can it do, and how can we apply that to make the process more efficient. I mean, the type of clients we deal with the tech startups, obviously there's a lot of tech out there, and an AI obviously is the big buzzword in the industry at the moment. It's how can we use that, yeah, to make our lives easier, to make processes efficient, and how does it, like you say, align with what we currently do, but then go the next step and make it better, not just match what we're doing. We're always striving for sort of that next step up. So it's sort of multi-leveled, but it's always that, yeah, how is it going to improve for us and the client?
Definitely. I think to summarize, I think it's understanding what work people are doing at the moment, but also thinking about where we're bringing in tech. What value can the people then add to that? What, if the tech is able to take away a lot of the manual work, where do the people get to go in and add the value from a client perspective? And I think that touches on what you were saying earlier, Jenny, about clients' perception of value. Actually, there's a real opportunity to use the tech to do some of the heavy lifting so that the people element can be real value add and really get clients on side. I think from a process perspective, like you're saying, go into it thinking about how can we improve this? What can the tech do for us? Instead of what tech can I use to replicate the manual process that we have currently. And mindset wise, I think it's staying open. It's looking at what is this going to do for us? How do we improve? How is this going to improve overall workflows for us? Beautiful. So, oh, I've gone the wrong way. Sorry. There we go. So, thinking then about workflows and bookkeeping in particular. This is, as I'm calling it, the modern bookkeeping loop. Sounds kind of catchy. But if we were to distill that down into kind of 4 areas, it's input, review, approval, and payments. If we're going to kind of get to the end of that workflow, Jenny, from your perspective, which of these slows this loop down the most, shall we say?
I'm going to agree with the feedback at the beginning. So getting the information in from the clients, the input, is our biggest sticky point. So.
Absolutely. And what do you guys do currently? What have you changed to try and improve that so far?
Yeah, so I mean, it's making sure clients can get us the information in as many different ways as possible that is least resistance from their side. So, I mean, a great one from Briefcase is WhatsApp. All of us are always on WhatsApp. It's just easy. Clients know how to use it. It's not another app they've got to download or another app they need to understand. They can just take the photo, send it straight in, nice and easy. We haven't got to be chasing. They haven't got to save it somewhere or go for a process. And it's just having that clear, concise communication with clients of, look, these are the softwares we're using. These are why we're using them to make your life easier, to try and get that commitment to them sending in the information sort of more timely, and hopefully in a format we can use.
Absolutely. And I think that's an interesting point. And Ruben, I'd like to open that up to you, because I think traditionally there was definitely a mindset that we should, particularly in accountancy firms, that they should pick a process and follow that process and implement that one process with clients. And actually what we're seeing with teams like yourselves do is start to open that up and go, okay, actually clients don't just have to provide information on an email in this particular format. They can now do it in a number of ways. But I think previously firms have been a little bit scared of that, of are we opening up lots of different pathways and almost more room for error or room for things to go walk about.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think the the other, I mean, yeah, getting data from clients is something that we hear all the time as like one of the biggest pain points, and it's a really difficult problem to solve. Like we are trying to solve it at Briefcase as much as we can, and like it's not an easy solution. It's not like the solution's out there and someone just has to build it. It does require thinking around how can you actually solve that. Reducing friction at upload is one of the things, right? And WhatsApp is one of the things. Maybe having really effective email auto forwarding, so you know every email that goes into an inbox can be scanned by AI and transactions can be identified proactively. That's another example of something that can be done there. But it is like a you need a multi-pronged approach, and it's a difficult problem. For me, the other thing here, which I think takes a lot of time, is the review process. I think that slows down the loop a lot. And the reason, and this was actually touched on by Jenny earlier, but the reason that this slows down the process a lot is that there are so many steps in the process. Like if you were to take just one transaction, um, it's not unreasonable to think that that transaction gets reviewed like 4 or 5 times because it gets reviewed once, often at the point of data capture in a data capture tool. It gets reviewed again when you reconcile the account. It gets reviewed again when you do maybe the month end close. Gets reviewed again when you do the VAT return. And I think it's easy to say, well, okay, you know, that's a 4-eye check that you're doing on 8-eye check that you're doing on one transaction. But I actually think part of the challenge there is that until recently, software hasn't really been capable of helping with that process. So you've needed to review it at data capture to make sure the extraction is accurate. You've needed to review it when you do the VAT return to make sure that you actually assign a VAT rate, that you identify whether it's reverse charge or zero rated. These are now things for the first time that actually software is capable of doing. And I think that's why it's an incredibly exciting time and why you could actually kind of drastically reduce the amount of steps that happen in the review process.
Definitely. And just for those on the session with us today that aren't currently using Briefcase, do you mind sharing just a little bit about what that looks like within Briefcase and how you're able to support with that?
Absolutely, yeah. I'm actually going to give a few just like nuggets of examples, rather than go over the whole thing. So I was speaking to a firm recently, and they check the VAT number on every invoice or receipt with HMRC to check that's a valid VAT number and a valid VAT supply. Now, most firms don't do that, and I don't think you should necessarily do that. But what is great with Briefcase is that one of our AI agents will check the VAT number on every document it receives automatically with HMRC. So if you were the firm that was doing that manually, amazing. You've instantly kind of saved that manual step on every single invoice. If you're a firm that wasn't doing that, great. You now have an extra kind of level of compliance and risk management in the product. So that's one example. Another example is setting up manual rules. In Briefcase, you don't have to set up manual supplier rules. The AI learns. That's another step that's kind of being eliminated because the AI is learning how to code transactions. We were talking about VAT earlier. A lot of systems will post transactions as extracted amount on VAT, which isn't actually a VAT rate. And then somebody has to then downstream figure out what VAT rate to apply, whether it's zero rated or reverse charge or something else. So you've just created an extra step just by the fact that the system wasn't smart enough to do that from the outset. So those are just kind of like a few examples where I think review steps can now be eliminated with the advancements that have happened in technology.
Amazing, very exciting. And Jenny, what's that done for you guys internally at Wilson Partners? What impact has that had?
Um, Amazing, revolutionary, in all honesty, because it just makes us so more efficient. So on average, we're 3 times faster at processing than we were originally with human input. So, I mean, we're going from document processing time being 20 seconds now rather than 60, which in itself is small, but when you start scaling that up, it's a massive impact. And in a couple of other stats, just get all excited about what it does for us. But sort of 97% of the documents are processed straight through without one of my team touching it, which is great because we're saving so much time. And not only at that level, but then like Reuben says, when we're coming to do the VAT reviews, we're so much more confident the figures are correct, so we're not having to do those multiple checkpoints, and we're confident the system's going to post to the right nominal codes, and if for whatever reason we then want to change something in Xero, it will talk back to Briefcase, which a lot of softwares don't do. So we know the information is seamless and what's on one side reflects the other, which again used to be a problem in the past. So yeah, I mean, there's lots more stats I can throw at you for how Briefcase has helped us, but there's some of the higher level ones.
I think you can take that quote there from Jenny, Reuben, just the revolutionary, and just have that at top of the website moving forward.
Definitely. An update coming soon.
But I think it's all really important, right? As we start to work through this loop, actually, one of the conversations that we have on our end constantly is with firms that come to us and they're saying clients are asking us to process payments for them, but actually we're just not confident that we're in a place to do that because the data that's going in isn't accurate and we don't want to be responsible for wrong amounts or things going wrong. And I think we are constantly pushing it back and saying we need to make sure that the data in is clean, that it's accurate before we get to the point of payment. And so I think particularly for firms looking at offering payments, it's definitely been something that's off-putting. But like you say, Ruben, these advancements are meaning that actually we can get this through this stuff much quicker. As you're saying, Jenny, actually the percentages on accuracy are getting really, really high, so that actually we're getting really confident in the information we have in these systems, so that when you then go and implement something like Telleroo on the back end, instead of it feeling like this real huge task of adding something extra, it can be quite a nice, efficient thing where we go, well, we're really confident in the data, so we can create pay runs really quickly and the clients can approve them, and we take this huge piece of admin that it was previously and just streamline that right down. And I think that's the piece that's really exciting, is that actually it's opening up a real opportunity to, like you said right at the start, Jenny, is to go in and do the real value add stuff that clients appreciate, because actually a lot of them don't unfortunately see the value in the bookkeeping piece. But when you can go, we can do that bit really efficiently, and now we can take 2 hours off your plate of you processing payments, they go, oh wow, and they feel that impact immediately. But actually the impact on your team and the kind of capacity there isn't impacted that much because you've got everything else working seamlessly to start with. And I think that's really, really exciting, and we're definitely starting to see more and more firms kind of pick up that extra work and extra fees, which is also nice. But moving on a little bit more, we've obviously been talking about your experience, Jenny, of kind of what's changed, etc. But I guess what I want to dive into a little bit more is when you are bringing in tools like Briefcase, payment tools, whatever it might be, how do you look at the impact on the team and on clients?
Yeah, so a couple of different ways. Like I say, obviously on Briefcase, we've been doing stats just because of how much of a difference it was bringing to the team. So we wanted to actually be an accountant, put figures around that and sort of do a more in-depth dive. But generally, I mean, it is as well sort of how it's affecting the team. So how are they feeling about it? Where are their pain points? What do they want to do? Sort of like you say, when we're freeing up this time, it means they can go and do more of the stuff they actually enjoy doing, which again means they're more engaged with their work and they're a happier team, which is exactly what we want. And also, yeah, like off the back of the pain points and just the risk element as well as a firm, it's making sure we're reducing errors as much as possible. As much as we all like to think we don't make that many, we're human, it happens, it's inevitable. And obviously the fallout from that on clients' trust and relationships is far reaching. So especially sort of like payment runs or accounts payables runs. So sort of when you're able to use a system like Telleroo, and like you say, because you've got clean data at the beginning, it just makes it such an efficient process, and it means you can then see the time saving and the fact that the team are happy, they're not so worried about making payments because they're not sure of the data that went in, and generally as well, just our billable time obviously is becoming a stronger figure. So
I think that's really important. I think we definitely have conversations with firms, and one of the questions I like to ask firms when they kind of approach us is about their previous experience of implementing new systems. What worked, what didn't work, What did you really like about it? What didn't you, just to get a feel and a bit of a steer for how they handle projects like that typically. And I think one of the questions we always ask is, how did you measure the impact of that? Was it hours saved? Was it team feedback? Was it billable hours? Was it increased fees? What was it? And I think I'm always surprised by the number of firms that come back to us and say, oh, we didn't really track it, but it feels better. And whilst that is important, that things feel good, and I'm a big advocate for the way people feel when they're at work and how work feels, I think when you are bringing in tools like Telleroo, like Briefcase, you need to have those measurable impacts. You need to be able to really look at things and understand the benefit that it's actually having in a little bit more depth. And so it's definitely something that we encourage firms to do, is to really think about what numbers they are trying to move, what things they are trying to adjust, and track those. And it might be that bringing in a system doesn't have as much impact as you think. And that doesn't mean you shouldn't use it anymore, but it's important to understand, as you say, the actual impact it's having. So that's great to hear. Reuben, from your side, I'm a big advocate for us as software vendors and providers for also owning part of that equation, right? And helping firms to understand impact. It would be good to know from your side what you're seeing as a whole. What impact is Briefcase and that kind of automation having on firms?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we always I guess one benefit of being from the software side is that you get access to all the data. So we always try and share that data wherever possible to actually help firms understand the impact that it's having, or to help firms understand where maybe Briefcase isn't doing what it could be doing or where it could be doing better. I think a super interesting almost side effect of Briefcase. We didn't necessarily intend for this, but when a lot of the time when we have like a customer using Briefcase for the first time, we'll be monitoring the data and we'll be looking, okay, well, the AI selected this VAT rate, and we'll be going, oh, okay, and actually the bookkeeper changed the VAT rate to something else. On numerous occasions, that's actually created training opportunities for the team, because we've then gone and said, hey, we noticed you moved this from reverse charge to zero rated, and we go, we actually, like, based on the legislation that our agent was trained on, and actually thought this should be reverse charge, just wondering if you could help explain it. And then it might be that a junior bookkeeper was doing it, and actually they'd be like, oh, I actually didn't know that, and they learn something new, and then it actually kind of creates these amazing training opportunities. So I think that's been kind of not necessarily an intended consequence, but a really great example of how technology can help, not just with efficiency, but also with kind of helping your team upskill themselves as well.
I love that. I think it's one of the things that as an industry there is, when we've talked about pricing with accountants and bookkeepers previously, there's always been this thing of, you're not just charging for time, you're charging for the years of experience and the up-to-date CPD knowledge and all of these things. But I think in a world that now moves so fast, I think it's a great example of where tech is able to come in and really support on those, and provide almost quick wins in learning and changes where actually things might get missed. So I think that's absolutely fantastic. Jenny, from your perspective, if you were going back to day one of starting a firm now and bringing clients in, when you're thinking about technology, when you're thinking about that kind of modern bookkeeping flow that we worked through, what areas would you prioritize in getting right straight away?
Yeah, I mean, it is nowadays, I think, more that initial sort of how the data gets into the system and is processed. I mean, generally for our client base, because sort of the sectors they're in, they're so fast moving. So we do need to have sort of a really fluid and efficient software slash app stack. And it's got to be scalable is the massive thing for our clients, in the whole that we can bring it in at the beginning nice and small, but we design the processes and the software so it can grow with them, hopefully to exit. And it also needs to be flexible, and it can be accessed anywhere, anytime by the client or ourselves. So it is that slick process that you can do it on the go effectively. It's, I mean, process whole to end, but yeah, data integrity and input and having it right at the beginning is definitely crucial.
Couldn't agree more. And Ruben, I'm sure you'll agree, but anything you want to add to
I think Jenny said it better than I could.
that? No problem at all. So I'm going to wrap things up from this side, and then we're going to move into Q&A because we've got a number of questions, which is really exciting. But three things to remember, I think, in terms of takeaways of what we talked about. The first one is you don't necessarily need a bigger team, just a smarter one. And I don't say smarter in terms of educationally smart, it's more the way in which you're working. What tools are we bringing in? How are we thinking about that? Number two, small process changes can unlock big results. You don't necessarily have to overhaul your entire process to see any results. Sometimes those small tweaks, just replacing parts of the process, can unlock those big wins. And it means that you can do things in stages and it can be a little bit less overwhelming. And ultimately, bookkeeping is evolving, and that means that your workflows, your tools need to evolve too. And I think being open, going back to what we talked about before, that kind of people, processes, mindset piece, mindset is really, really important on this. Yes, AI is a big buzzword. Yes, people are pushing lots of new technology. The accounting industry, I think more than most, sees a constant influx of new providers, all selling shiny things and telling you how wonderful they're going to be for your firm. But I think stepping back, doing some evaluation, looking at what kind of KPI and numbers you want to change and evolve, and then going into that with an open mindset and being open to seeing what the tech can do to improve those processes is going to be really, really meaningful for firms as they start to unlock a little bit more of that capacity. Going to launch a poll quickly before I do Q&A, which is just around what support you might need from us next. So conscious that we haven't done demos, we haven't hit you with sales pitches, but both Briefcase and Telleroo can help with a lot of the things that you have heard from all of us today. So feel free to pop answers in there and we will make sure that we follow up with you appropriately. But while that is on screen, I am going to start with questions. So, Jenny, I'm going to throw this one out to you first, which is how do you convince partners and or clients and the team to adopt new workflows?
Yeah, really good question. So in all honesty, if you've got a good process, it sort of sells itself, especially when we're coming to software. I mean, the ones we've rolled out, yeah, they are brilliant pieces of software, and just explaining to the client the benefits to them or to the team, how it's going to aid them, how it's going to make their lives easier or the process more efficient. It's just that, clear, concise communication, really. Yeah, I mean, rightly or wrongly, we haven't really had any pushbacks on the ones we've rolled out. But that's because we've done a lot of due diligence and testing beforehand to make sure it works, and it's flexible, so we can change it for different clients, and making sure, it fulfills the need.
Amazing. Reuben, anything you'd add to that?
I think one thing I'd add that's really helpful, especially with clients, is just being honest with them as much as possible. I don't think that you need to shy away from the fact that you're adopting AI as a firm. And I actually think it can be an incredible strong selling point. I've actually, again, this wasn't obvious to me from the start, but I actually had one of our customers mention to me not too long ago that they were trying to win a client from another firm. And one of the selling points that they used was the fact that they were an AI forward firm using the latest technology. Which I think is an incredibly strong argument to make, and it can, and then if you just tell your clients like, look, this process is going to help us deliver our service more efficiently to you, help you have more accurate data, make your life easier. And yes, it uses AI, and that's because we want to be at the forefront. We don't want to be left behind, and we don't want you to be left behind as a result. Then I think that's an incredibly strong argument to make.
Definitely. Definitely. Okay, fantastic. Next one here, Jenny, this is going to be a great one for you actually, which is with the use of Briefcase and other tools, how are you training junior staff to understand the basics now that they aren't involved in manually doing bookkeeping work?
Really good question, and it's something we've been debating, in all honesty, over sort of the last 9 months as we've been working with Reuben on Briefcase. It is really hard because they more or less jump in partway through the process. So we have taken the time to make sure any new starters, we really do go back to basics and teach them the debits and credits, make sure they understand how the bookkeeping should work, and how the system is treating it in the background. So they might not see it, they just see the end result, but making sure they understand the mechanics of it, which obviously is time consuming, but once they've got it, you've got the building blocks for a really good team member.
Fantastic. I think that's something people are always going to worry about, right? Is as we start to automate this stuff, is there a gap in learning? So I think that's great. Um, in terms of when you are implementing new software, we touched on this a little bit earlier, but someone's asked specifically, what kind of numbers or KPIs would you be tracking when implementing new tech? Jenny, over to you.
Yep, I was going to say, if I go first. It does sort of depends what software we're bringing in. So on Briefcase, like we say, we were working out on a standard client how long it used to take us. So how much quicker we're doing job, how much WIP is converting to sort of billable time, how much write-off time we're taking. On the VAT process, again, it was how much review time are we reducing? How much are we profitability are we now making on the job compared to before? And again, just generally hours. How many hours are we spending on the job now compared to what it was before? And then again, with the use of Reuben, how accurate we were making the system and how much time we were putting into the system to get out the outputs we were hoping for. So from an accounting perspective, not the sort of KPIs we would normally talk about. But yeah, generally, how is it working for us? Or sometimes, how is it not working for us? And then how could we work, say, with Reuben to make the process more efficient or to do something slightly different? It's just a learning curve, but yeah, making sure we do have those data and those figures to prove, like you say, what we're thinking, to make sure that there is a tangible effect.
Fantastic. A couple of back-to-back ones here for you, Reuben. One is, what happens if records provided are not valid, VAT receipts, etc.?
Yeah, so we basically the AI will when it does a number of checks on a receipt, it checks the VAT number, it checks is it a valid receipt. And when it's checking whether it's a valid receipt, it checks is it over £250, is it like a full valid VAT receipt or is it a valid simplified VAT invoice? If it's not a valid VAT receipt, we will typically put it to 0 rated, depending on the location, because you cannot claim back that receipt. So again, it's all based around the legislation, but their agent does check for things like that.
Amazing. And another one here, which is, how effectively does Briefcase handle multiple nominal coding on a single invoice?
Yeah, great question. So at the moment, we code transactions on a transaction level basis, and then we do VAT assignment on a line item basis. We are going to be expanding that to do nominal code assignment on a line item basis. So that functionality will be in the product soon, but you can still, of course, separate these nominal codes yourself if you want.
Amazing. And one for both of us, I think, here, Reuben, which is, do these tools support audit trails or reporting for compliance and transparency? I'll let you go first.
This is such an important question, and especially with in the context of AI, because AI can be a black box. It can be something which it's difficult to understand why it did what it did or how it took the steps that it took. So one thing that we do in Briefcase is we make every single decision explainable. So whenever the AI decides a VAT rate or category or anything else, you can get a little pop-up window where the AI will explain, hey, I chose this VAT rate because of this piece of legislation that said this, or I chose this category because of these previous transactions which were categorized to this account code. And having that is basically your audit trail. That's basically how you also build trust in the product, because you can actually, justify the decisions of the product. Just like if this was actually a junior bookkeeper and you said, hey, why did you categorize that transaction that way? They can explain it to you. So that's a really important thing, kind of explainability in AI, which is something that we're trying to pioneer at Briefcase.
Amazing. And from our side, yeah, exactly that. You can see exactly what payment runs have been created. You can see who's approved. You can see when they approved. You can see what payments were declined. Everything syncs back to 0. So you've got full audit trails of exactly what happened and who did what the entire time. So yeah, that's completely covered. One for you here, Jenny. In terms of bookkeeping charges, with the use of Briefcase, is that enabling you to lower bookkeeping fees or maintain current fees with higher margins?
Yep, so we have maintained current fees with higher margins, but it also means we can invest more time in the next sort of step, so the value add, so making sure we're providing feedback or the extra services in regards to sort of management accounts, or having that extra time to spend, especially for our clients, because they will be going through DD at some point, whether that's sale or fundraising. So it's just making sure the figures and the information is as clean and sort of up to date as possible. So bit of both.
Perfect. Two here on Telleroo that I'll answer quickly. One in the chat that was around uploading files directly from BrightPay. You can do that. We accept the exports from them. I can send you some information on that. And the other was, when approaching a client to implement Telleroo, what benefits do you highlight first? Are there any PDF mail outs? We've got lots of content to share with clients that talks all about who we are, what we do, how it helps them. So absolutely we can share that information with you. But in terms of what to highlight first, I think that depends on the situation of the client. Is it that payments are taking them a very long time, in which case there's a time-saving thing to highlight? Is it that they are regularly making errors, in which case it's going to be data accuracy because it's pulling from source? If it's actually that they want better controls in place around approvals, then that would be the angle. So I think it really depends on what issue the client is facing around payments as to then how to best position it. But happy to have that conversation one-on-one, and we'll reach out to you afterwards. One here for Reuben. What are the plans for MTD income tax for Briefcase in regards to AI?
Thank you very much for this question. I can actually give a little exclusive because this isn't publicly announced yet, but Briefcase is going to be building a standalone MTD solution. So hopefully we'll have some more news on that later this year. I mean, like, MTD is a perfect use case for AI. It's largely a data capture, data collection problem, which Briefcase is already very good at handling for limited companies. So we are just expanding that functionality so it can also work for individuals. And that will be a standalone solution. So it will have the direct integrations with HMRC, and so that you can produce your EON accounts, also your self-assessment tax return through the platform as well at the end of the year.
Fantastic. And last one here, which is, do clients need to log into these systems, or are you managing everything for them?
Jenny, do you want to take that?
Yeah, I was going to say, from our side, we tend to manage them. Briefcase for sure. Clients don't really want something extra. They just want somewhere to send their invoices, and then really that's all they want to do. Telleroo, we have a slight mix. We've got a couple of clients that uses Telleroo for multiple payment runs. So we just getting involved in certain elements. But generally on the whole, yeah, they are under us.
Amazing. I think we've managed to get through all the questions and do it in time to close off, which is perfect. So all questions answered, which is fantastic. A huge thank you to you, Reuben. A huge thank you to you, Jenny, for joining us and sharing lots and lots of wisdom, and even an exclusive from Reuben there around MTD. Thank you all for joining us and for all your wonderful questions. For those of you that have asked for specific contact afterwards around demos, myself, the Briefcase team, will be in touch where needed. And similarly, for those that have asked for things in the chat, we will reach out to you with those bits too. But have a lovely rest of the day and take care. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.